Hello, I'm FerrousPilot, and today we're going to be talking about my new VR gaming PC build. I'm going to be going into detail about the components I chose and why I picked them. If that's not your jam, you should probably watch a different video. You'll also find links to everything I mentioned in the description, so don't worry about that. Let's start with the CPU. I went with the Intel Core i7-6700K processor, which is top of the line before you get into the Extreme Edition LGA 2011 socket processors. To be honest, even this isn't necessary for gaming. If I just wanted gaming performance on CPU-heavy games, I'd get a 6600K and overclock it. So why get a 6700K? Aside from a marginally higher base clock, which again can be achieved through overclocking, it has hyperthreading. Not very useful for gaming, but a nice to have as a developer and video maker to reduce build and encode times. Why not go past quad-core and venture into Extreme Edition territory? Well, it's not just a logical pay a bit more and get a better CPU trade-off at that point. You need to buy an LGA 2011 motherboard, which tend to be more expensive and, crucially, have fewer user reviews because not many people have them. This makes it hard to find a reliable board. Speaking of a reliable board, I got an MSI Crate Gaming 3X motherboard, primarily because in addition to having the features I wanted, it had a very small number of user reviews complaining about defects relative to the very large number of user reviews overall. I did this because I wanted to minimize my chances of getting a defective product. I mean, if your RAM goes bad on you, you just take it out and pop in a new set. If your motherboard goes bad, you have to reinstall your entire rig. With that being said, this board does have a few cool features like a USB Type-C port and an M.2 slot for a slick, uber-fast, small form factor SSD that I'm never gonna use. Next up, the CPU cooler. I got a Corsair H100i V2 because it looks cool and doesn't hide half my motherboard. If I'm being honest, an air cooler like the Be Quiet Dark Rock 3 with somewhat higher temps would have more than sufficed for my needs and for half the price. However, the large radiator hanging off your motherboard makes it a pain to go in and change things up. My motherboard, for example, has a system fan header right below the CPU, which would probably be inaccessible without some disassembly if I'd went with a large air cooler. The case I picked was the Fractal Design Define R5, which is a silent, full tower case capable of housing pretty much anything. Now, I don't need all that room, but I do like the quiet, and all the modularity this case offers is a nice benefit as well. You can remove or reposition various parts of the case. I opened up 2 fan slots at the top for my CPU cooler and removed the optical drive cage and one of the hard drive cages to get better airflow. It's also noticeably quieter than my previous rig, which is lovely when you're doing any kind of audio recording. The only other case I was considering was the NZXT H440, which is also a silent case. I decided against it because although it looks really cool, the design also impedes airflow a lot. Let's move on to RAM. I got 16 gigabytes of some cheap 2400Hz DDR4 RAM. It has a typical CAS latency of 15, and I don't need any higher of a clock speed. RAM is RAM. Moving on, something where performance matters a lot, the video card. I got an EVGA GTX 1080 Superclocked Edition, which just means it comes with a slight factory overclock. The GTX 1080 is a very powerful card and grossly excessive for simple 1080p gaming at 60 FPS. That said, it's a great way to get the best fidelity out of VR games by really cranking up that anti-aliasing. Also a good choice for a 1440p monitor at 144Hz, which I may have also acquired. Let's be real though, the GTX 1070 and 1060 are both excellent alternatives for a VR-focused rig and far more cost-effective. How are you going to power such a rig, you might ask? And the answer is using an EVGA Supernova G2 80 Plus Gold 650 watt power supply. It has good user reviews, it's fully modular, the price is very reasonable for the features it has, and most importantly, Johnny Guru said it was great. This is one EVGA component that's not going to explode. For storage, I went with a 500GB SK Hynix SSD and 2 1TB Western Digital Blue disk drives. I originally wanted to get a Samsung SSD, but I missed the sale, so I went with this one instead and chose 2 1TB hard drives instead of one 2TB hard drive because they can be used in RAID 0 for speed. My VR platform of choice was the HTC Vive. Between this and the Oculus Rift, there are some minor advantages and disadvantages either way. Oculus has a nicer looking display, and the aesthetics and weight balance of the headset itself are far better. Meanwhile, the Vive has a better tracking system that doesn't involve connecting the IR sensors to the PC with USB cables, and a bit more room for glasses. In terms of controllers, the Oculus Touch controllers have a much more ergonomic design that I think feels more comfortable. It is a touch small, and I could see this being a problem if you have large hands the size of a fruit bat's wingspan, but for the average consumer, I don't think it's going to be a big issue. There's also a nice analog input for the grip button. Unfortunately, they're not rechargeable. You have to use a AA battery. Don't get me wrong, the battery life is not the issue. They last a long time. I just don't like dealing with batteries. The Vive controllers can be plugged into a socket or USB port to charge, and their triggers go click when you fully depress them, which is a minor thing, but also nice. And I think that does it for hardware. Thanks for watching, and you'll find links to everything I mentioned in the video description. Oh, and look out for the video I make on the actual build process. That's going to be a pretty cool stop motion style video. Check it out. Bye.